physical wealth. Hello, hello, hello. Today is Monday, November 11, 2024. It is quite a week, hasn't it been, for everyone? Okay, so my name is Tina Phillips, and I am going to do a show called the Erudition Network Adroit Living Session. Here, I like to talk about things that help improve mental health remotely. I talk about things that address the whole person holistically, because a lot of times we solely focus on a singular aspect, and that's just not enough. It's just not good enough, because it's so many different things that's happening simultaneously, and trying to address them more holistically helps more than singular focus. So today I'm going to talk about a few things. There's been a lot of people who have expressed strong emotions about this presidential election season and the outcome. And though I try to prepare people to be helpful to first themselves and then others, it's difficult to help people when you already hurting yourself. So I totally get it. I totally understand, but keep your head up. Keep your head up. Hey, big bro, how you doing? I appreciate you for tuning in. Ask questions if you have any, okay? This is an interactive show. So first, I want to open up by saying thank you to everyone who's joining remote mental health care. I'm no genius. I'm just consistent. I've been saying the same thing in academia for more than 20 years. Practitioners and academia may all be reading the same studies and observing the same things that I've read and observed. It's all the same information. However, I've concluded a different understanding of the same information. Some people ask, how did you do that? I tried to tell them, then they will urge me to say it without putting God into it. Don't credit God for your work, they say. And I will reply, look and see where that's got you. Look at empirical and seminal studies. Doing what you're doing and asking it's caused this inconsistent outcome and the unreliable results. So I can't take the credit for things that I don't have any credit for it. I tell you how I come up with it. You see the same methods that they are using and it's failing, but they're stubborn to yield because they want all the credit for themselves. And it's like, knowing, that doesn't work. You should change that, but people are stubborn in their ways and they have to learn sometimes the hard way. Hi, Sean Anthony. Thank you for tuning in. And yes, happy Veterans Day. Today is Veterans Day. So happy Veterans Day to all veterans and the families and the people, I should say, who support them. So today's show is called Turn All Things for the Good. Now, we recently saw how mainstream media went out of their way to show during the presidential voting time, that is, they really emphasized the different categories which identified the voters. And they overemphasized it for a reason. Why? What is that reason? Well, signals and time at times are, subtle, and they're repetitive, or they're constant, because people are not heeding the signal. Y'all got to bear with me because I'm not accustomed to being on the camera, so I might stutter a little bit. But anyway, by the time the signal is boisterous or blatantly obvious, it's usually hindsight, extremely dire, or it's too late. If people show a trust to you in their most dire need, whether it's because they're mentally or emotionally or whatever the dire need is, if they trust you and you fail to deliver as promised, and you got to trust that there's going to be some sort of failure on your part to deliver as you promise. You have good intentions, but what they say, good intentions pave the road. Okay. But it's mainly because you're human. You're human, so you're limited. You have limitations. But those who are trusting you will deliver as promised. They're not thinking it in that way. They won't consider that you just human and you may have tried your best. When people are in dire need, they're done thinking logically or reasonably. They only want results, fast results that they've desired for so long, and the things that they were promised, or the things that were extremely highly anticipated. Your promises as a human with limited ability and limited control will be overlooked. History shows this much. I mean, look at Caesar, look at Hitler. They had high promises, but at the end of the day, it was the very people in their circle who brought them to their end. Remember Moses and his Pharaoh? They were brothers. You know, why? Why were they brothers? What was the purpose behind them being brothers? Well, the heart of the Pharaoh was intended to be made light instead of hardening the hearts of the pharaohs, because they're like, oh, I got to be the better Pharaoh. Well, better than the last Pharaoh. And everybody was all in such competition to be the best Pharaoh. And they would make all the people build all of these monuments and things to their, to their whatever, be better and bigger than the last one. And it's like Moses Pharaoh, he had innate in him a desire to be better than what he saw them being, what he saw the past pharaohs being. And being Moses' brother, it was to help the pharaoh feel more empathetic, more like, oh, I can understand you. I can feel like I have vested interest in your well-being because I love you. I care about you. You, my brother. Everything was set in place. Even Pharaoh's desire to be, a good Pharaoh. Every Pharaoh wants to be a good Pharaoh. But how do you get there? Hi, Eddie. I appreciate you being here. Happy Veterans Day. So even with Moses' Pharaoh knowing the past failures of the other pharaohs, he was like, yeah, I think I can do better. I can go out here and I can do something better. We heard that before, haven't we? I'm going to go and I'm going to expose all these things. And, but when time and opportunity presents itself, sometimes things happen differently than anticipated. But anyway, history paints a clear picture. It shows when collective bad actors want bad things to happen, they need a fall guy. And any guy will be used, swayed to, well, not just used, but they'll also be swayed to go against his own previously stated goals and his best interests. All bad things occurring under his administration will be blamed on him, and he'll meet an end no one will care about or learn from, because others will fail in the same way, because one, they failed to learn from history. Two, they failed to heed their own discernment. Three, they failed to act in their own previously stated intents. And before they had ever had the opportunity. So sometimes they get distracted with time and opportunity, and they forget everything that they set out to do. Hitler did the same thing. He forgot what he had set out to do. Caesar did the same thing. Pharaoh did the same thing. It is historical. You just got to read it. And even if you don't read it, watch the movie. They make a bunch of them about it. But anyway, so before these people came into the power and opportunity, they were gun ho about getting these things done, but they failed because they heed the warnings, and the last warnings are always directed towards the loss of their life, while they're still in those wrong decision makings, and those things are happening to urge them to turn around before it's too late. Unfortunately, Caesar didn't get the opportunity to turn around. He was stubborn, set in his ways. He wasn't going to turn around. Hitler, same thing. He didn't. It was too late. So back to the Pharaoh. Well, no, we saw what happened with the Pharaoh. It didn't end well for him either, even though it was designed so his heart would be softened by the fact that that's his brother. He's empathetic to him because that's his people. But it didn't work out that way. We can currently see that the masses are not as uneducated as mainstream media may have reported during the presidential election time, where everybody was counting votes. They said that the mainstream media was like, oh, these are the people in this rural area. This is the category of people who haven't completed college or haven't attended college. They had a lot of different labels. These are the women, whatever category, but it all was signifying something. It signified, and they went out of their way to make sure that they signified the different levels of educations. These were the uneducated. These were the people who had college educations, and this is who they voted for. That's a signal. And the mainstream media accurately reported the actions of those with brick and mortar education or board of education level education. But I tried to say so many times in so many ways, people are not limited to the understandings and education man-made or orthodox established. Education and training did not start with the Board of Education. I know a lot of people may not have read my book, but I put it in a book. I put it in academic writing as well, but I put it in a book. And that book is called Generational Wealth, Information Asymmetry, and Your Success. It's available at Amazon and lulu.com, and you can ask for it anywhere books are sold. But I explain in there in great detail of a very, very short, very small book to read. You can read it within a weekend, but it's a power-packed book. I encourage you to get it and read it. But anyway, the Board of Education tries to track people's level of education or understanding to reach people despite barriers. And those barriers would otherwise prohibit invasion, because that's what it will be called, an invasion or intrusion into people's homes and touching their little ones. Or it's like those barriers that have the divide that's like, oh, we don't want our girls educated in that way, just focus on educating the guys. But this particular method promises to reach people beyond those borders. The thing about it is, it also uses that accessibility to create predictable behaviors via motivators and stimulus to incentivize the people. Have you ever seen where people are like, oh, well, I know somebody said something about train a child in the way it should go, so when it's older, it will not depart from that way. Well, there you have it. I also mentioned in my last show, I was like, A lot of people are not aware of how things get twisted and where the information derived from in order for it to be twisted at all. Where was it established? The name Karen, for example, it was established way back in Job's day in the Bible. Um, and it was like, well, Job had a daughter, and that daughter, she was the fairest in the land. That means all the things that's good and beautiful and lovely. And we've taken it and twisted it. We made a mockery of it. And we don't even know. The masses have no idea how that's been twisted. A lot like education and the brick and mortar schooling, it's been twisted. You take the children and you train them in the way you want them to go. So when they're adults, they won't part from it. So it's a predictable behavior. So we can understand how to motivate and incentivize them to have predictable behaviors. But is nonetheless, it has failed to totally accomplish. Schools have failed to totally accomplish its overreaching goals for countless reasons. They cannot predict the level of education that people have simply based on who did and who did not attend a brick and mortar school. But these people reported to have seemingly willfully voted against their own best interests were not mindless, even though it kind of gives the allure that, yeah, they didn't know no better. Yeah, they're not mindless. They're trusting. They're fed up, and they're in dire need, which are all combinations of a very dangerous place to lead from. Well, from what history shows is what I'm saying. I don't like history because it's depressing, it's sad, and I would rather avoid being associated with all that past grim stuff. You ever heard people say that? Yep, I've heard people say it. I can associate a feeling of a partly that way. I can kind of get down with that. But especially because these current times are so grim enough, we really can feel like, man, I don't want to be associated with any of that stuff. I don't even want to remember it. Don't even bring it to my remembrance. I just want to be happy all the time. That's kind of the allure everybody is trying to give, off, that we all just want to be happy all the time. But you got to learn from your past. Everybody's got to learn. People have to learn. Nope, God is not mocked. History shows that too. Sometimes people learn the hard way despite their best interest to be happy. Free will can be that way sometimes. What you say, Sean Anthony? Yeah, but history is important if you wish not to repeat the mistakes. Yeah, a lot of times people, it's not just that the history is depressing or sad, it's that it's shameful. Nobody wants to be said that that was them or that was their ancestors, because it's a shame what took place in hindsight, and maybe even during the time it was shameful. But it's written, people are created in God's image and in his likeness, which means you look like God and you have ways like God, but it's different. Different for the purpose of being uniquely you all the time, even in God's presence. And when you think God isn't watching, I know there was times when I was like, oh, I'm doing some stuff I know I shouldn't be doing. God, you're going to have to overlook me. Just don't look right now, because I'm going to do this thing. And it's like God looking down on you like, even in your sins, I'm here with you. I know. I knew what you were going to do. I made your flesh. I know you have a will in you that's a lot like God, that you want to be sovereign. You want to have control, but you can't and you won't. But to an extent, I will permit an excuse, especially if you ask. So you don't have to think that you shying away from God because you're not doing something that's pleasing in his sight. Because yeah, God said you can do you all the time. He's not he's not looking at you that way. It's not like a successor because God isn't going anywhere. God doesn't need a successor. He doesn't need somebody to succeed him. So you can be you all the time, regardless of what that means, even if it means it's displeasing to God, even if it means that you are voting against your own best interest. You know how people train successors to do as they do despite their presence or their absence? They just really expect that that successor is going to do everything that they told them to do. Well, the successor may perform. That's the thing. That's the key word. They perform, act as directed. But once the guidance of is completely removed, the successor does whatever they want and fashions things according to their own way. Well, God grants us free will to do as we like, even in his presence. He knows what we'll do. We're given time and opportunity to do it. But we must learn it's all according to God's purpose and his way. That's why we have the free will to do whatever. So you're not getting away with anything. You know what you was going to do, give you time. He also know when you're going to turn around. So God's will is for things to not go your way and for you to conclude your way outside of his aid is never prosperous. So when we looking at current events, you have to remember that. Only because it takes God to turn all things for the good of them who loves him. Everything you believed you were doing right, but it turned out wrong. That's included. Everything can be turned for your good, even things done with ill intent, things intended to destroy, to discourage, to dissuade you, and to lead you to self-harm and fatal ways. Everything can be turned for your good after you humble yourself for your own good and admit and admonish and give credit where it's due. It's going to take God to turn it all in your favor, but humble is the way. You can't keep sitting there taking the credit for everything, thinking, oh, I'm going to get through it. You need God's help. And you have to acknowledge that, hey, yeah, it wasn't me. I was lacking. I was slacking. But somehow it just turned around in my favor. And I know that was nothing but God. It's got to be a God somewhere. Even in your unbelief, you still have to understand that you are acknowledging you're limited. And in doing so, you helping other people to understand that they have to accept that you limited. Because if you had full control over everything, they'll be like, well, man, I'm blaming you because you had full control. You don't have control. Now, don't get me twisted. I'm not against labels, titles, or man-made orthodoxy. I simply remind people of facts. I've been blessed to write academically for over 20 years. I only remind people of facts via theoretical reviews of global empirical and seminal studies, not excluding phenomena. A lot of people want to throw out phenomena and they call it outliers, anomalies, and intricate details that don't matter and don't add up. It's not having an impact, but actually it is having an impact, but you need to dive into it more to find out exactly what and how, and you need to report what you find instead of contouring things to determine whether you are accurate in your stimulus that you're trying to control and the outcome. That's not the way. Phenomena aids men to be humble. Phenomena aids the cohesion of the bigger picture. It has purpose. For example, self accountability is important because it aids people to be sane. Accepting responsibility for things you are actually accountable for helps you to recognize the value of your actions and free will. It also leads to spontaneous improvements. And in phenomena, when we're sitting there looking for an answer, a lot of time phenomenon pops up, things that we can't control. And that's aiding our understanding that we don't understand everything. We can't control everything. The bigger picture one says free will is to be observed, never taken away. What's freely given must also be freely given away, but never give it away. Never give away your free will. It's associated with innate discernment and the words that's hidden in your heart that only God and you know. And it can cause spontaneous behavior because you might improve, and it'll be in a way that people who were trying to predict your behavior won't be able to track it, because it was like a moment ago you was gung-ho, all left, 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 and now suddenly, without any kind of signal that you were going to change, you spontaneously changed and went in the opposite direction. It's about that discernment, and the words that's hidden in your heart is triggers. But anyway, secondly, never lose hope and is not in control. No matter what it looks like, God is in control. Just humble yourself to find out. Anomalies, we see it as far as researchers and people who are studying and observing research and testing subjects and taking surveys. They see it in anomalies, and they see it in outliers. They're seeing it as, and they name it phenomena. They're seeing it as inconsistent, uncontrollable variables and outcomes. That signals you're not in control. No matter how much you try to be in control, you're not in control. Everything in life is happening so repetitively to show you're not in control, though you would like to be. We all want to be, because we want to know, we want to predict things so we know what to expect and be prepared for it. But it takes the only one true sovereign God to turn all things for the good of them who love God. And trust, you love God, because when you are in dire need and there's nobody else around and you have this need, like save your life type of need, first thing you're going to do is call on God. Oh my God. See, there we go. And He going to answer, because He knew this moment was coming. And this is an opportunity between the two of you. This is y'all's opportunity. For example, people set traps and God blocks them with a purpose. So just like the opportunity for you that you didn't see coming, where you're like, I don't even know if I believe in God. I don't even know if I love God, but let your life be on the line and something happens spontaneously that you didn't expect, and you find yourself in harm's way. You're going to say, oh my God, God help me. Oh my God, I don't want to die. Oh my God, I don't want this bad thing to happen. So yeah, you too. You love God, you believe God, and you trust Him, because you ain't calling on nobody else for help. That's all I'm saying. Things happen in great repetition so that even the fool can understand, which is why I understand, and I was able to understand even in my unbelief, because I didn't know for myself. I could say I wish I could say I was in the presence of a faith place, or in the presence of somebody who was a strong believer in God when I first came to believe. but I was not. I was in dire need, and I was an unbeliever because I didn't know for myself. A lot of times we try to identify who is an unbeliever, but a lot of times unbelief because you don't have the experience for yourself. And that's where that comes from. It has nothing to do with hardening your heart all the time. What'd you say? We just want to be happy. What's for good? From the Partridge Family. Stop it. Really? Stop it. That was a good show, though. Reality is much more. Yeah, it is. And I hate to agree with that. But even in saying that and acknowledging that, we're acknowledging that we don't have control. We don't have full control. And God, it takes a sovereign God to turn everything for our good. Everything for our good, because we we can't we can't do it ourselves. And we take, self accountability for things that we can do and can't do, but we're in that we're vulnerable. And a lot of times people don't want to be vulnerable, but in that you open yourself up to stay sane, to improve your mental health, to say, look, I don't have it, but I'm going to get it. You don't have to know everything, because it's not possible for you to know whatever information is out there that you are unaware of. So before you made aware of the information and that you don't know it, you don't have it, you don't know. You can't know. Even a genius can't know what they don't know. You have to first be made aware of the information that you lack. Then study to show yourself approved. Learn, find out. Don't stay ignorant. That would be a problem. So if you know, when you find out that you don't know something, figure it out. Learn about it. Don't just wallow in the unknown and think that it's okay. It's not okay. But the more I research, I find answers no man has. The more I keep asking the most dangerous question that annoys the world. And what is that question? It's why. That annoys everybody in the world. Nobody wants you to ask why. Just do as I say and not as I do. Well, why would I do as you say and not as you do? Don't ask me no questions. I'm just saying, we've all heard that, whether it was directly stated or implied. We have all heard it. But the more I learn, God is not dead. I come to understand he's just unmoved in any controllable fashion. You see, there's things that's written in like the Bible and other books of faith where people are always trying to say, well, people who have faith in God, they move God, they doing this. No, that's not true. If you read it for yourself, you will see that each individual was uniquely assisted, uniquely experiencing God, uniquely asking for different things, and those things were being granted. And it's like somehow, some way, people took the will for you to read it for yourself, to come to that understanding on your own. And they led you to believe that if you do this thing and you're doing everything right, everything that you can possibly do right, then you're going to be able to control how God is going to make you experience good or bad things. That's not true. And the problem with that leads us to these current times where we think that, oh, well, everybody with a degree or high level of education, well, they all went right. So if we all go right, everything's going to be okay. Then it turns out Well, the outcome is everything went left. Now everybody's in such mental disarray that it's like, what do we do now? And it goes bad, it goes dark really quickly. But you have to understand, just like in Job's day, he did everything he could to be right, but it did not prevent the things that he was going to have to endure, which were undesirable. It didn't control. And then there was a part towards the end of the book of Job where God was like, I didn't ask your permission to do anything. I'm sovereign. I didn't ask you if it would be okay that even though you do good and I've forgiven you for your sins and I reward you and bless you, I didn't ask you if it'll be okay if you have a suffering period. Didn't ask you that. I didn't ask you anything. I don't need your account, your acceptance either. And it's like, we don't see it being emphasized that way in these faith-based institutions, that even though you're doing everything that you can to be right, that sometimes stuff just ain't gonna go out. It's just not gonna go your way, and it's got to be okay with you. You just got to hold on, live through it, and get through it. You can get through it, but it takes for that sovereign God to turn it all for the good of them who love God. And if you love somebody, even in hell and high water, you still love them and you trust. I don't trust nobody like that. I trust God like that. And I trust that whatever he has that's going wrong in my life, he's just going to turn it for my good. I don't know how he going to do it. I love to see it. I'm just saying, I don't know, but I trust it will. The answer, every answer to all of those things is always you just observe and you move accordingly. That is the answer to all questions. And if you're smart enough just to do that without asking why, you'll have, yourself a lot of time. You'll save yourself a lot of time and heartache of from fooling around and finding out. Now, I wasn't that smart. I asked why. I asked why a lot. And I promise you, in hindsight, I be wishing I didn't ask why, because my God, it takes time to get that drilled into you, beat it, and to harp on it so much so it's like, that's why. Now everything I look at, I see, well, that's why. Oh, that's why. Oh, now that makes sense. And it's like I can't stop seeing it now because I kept asking why so much. Now I see everything. Oh, well, that's why. Oh, wow. Why should I not try parkour? Oh, okay. That's why. It might hurt. I'm just saying. Hey, Jackie here. Please feel free to comment. And people ask, well, what's the question? What's the answer? What's the answer? I wants to know what's the answer. I'm going to repeat it again. The answer is you just observe and you move accordingly. This is the answer to all why questions. And if you're smart enough, you can avoid a whole lot of heartache and scars. But, those stories of how you earned those scars are entertaining. So even that turns for the good of them who love God. I like to hear a good story. You got a couple of scars. Yeah, how'd you get that scar? That's why God says my grace. Yes. And God's grace is sufficient, because a lot of times we sin and we don't even know it. Like when Job asked God, when he was feeling like, oh, well, God, I've sinned against you and I did so unknowingly. And I know I would pray and repent and ask you to forgive me, and you would forgive me and you would bless me. But now here you are making me reap so heavily, and I'm my flesh is falling from my bones. He was the first walking zombie, believe it or not, because you could literally see his bones, and he was alive because his flesh was falling from his bones as a part of his reaping of things he was reaping bad things he was reaping. And it's like, man, God, why don't you just, and he said, I'm not foolish enough to curse God and die. And he also said, I wish that I could self-harm fatally, but I can't do that because that is a sin. And he said, the only thing that I would do, the only thing I could think to do is with all my intelligence and all the understanding that I have, only thing I can think to do is ask God, just rule the day I was born. Don't let it be. Don't let the sun shine on the day I was born. But he didn't understand that that's how you sinning too. You can't ask God to take it back. Like I said before, anything freely given must be freely given away, and don't give it away. Your free will, don't give it away. Just find a way to live through it. And Job did that. He found a way to live through it, even though it was painful. He said it was so painful for his flesh to fall from his bones. He was out of his mind. He didn't think and consider how he could be sinning by asking God to take back something he gave. You can't ask God to do that. He thought he was clever though. I gotta give it to him. He thought he was clever. But it's nothing new under the sun. I'm just saying. God wishes that no soul should be lost. He says that. So it's like, who cares? God cares. He doesn't want you to be lost. And even in your sins, he's there with you. Why would he be there with you? Especially if you don't think you believe, or you say you don't believe. Why would he be there still? Because he wishes that no soul should be lost. I didn't write the book. I just read it. But I get it. We all can read the same thing, but get something different. But that's exactly why we need one another. And we have to help one another survive, because you may read something and I may read that same thing and we get two different understandings from it, but it's important. It's pertinent to our way of life and living and surviving. So I need you to survive. So that's the answer to why I care. And it's why is why anyone should care about others, even those who quote unquote don't look like us. It don't matter what somebody else look like. They You need them to survive, because you can't do it alone. Fall deep into a hole. Get yourself out. You can't. You need help. And that help is somebody else. It's coming from someone else. So you have to help them so they can later be a help to you. And even if they're not going to help you later, don't worry, because God always got a ram in the bush. I'm only talking about these things right now today because we need to understand how that applies to our current events and our state of mind, our current mental health. We need to understand that these things apply to these current events. God can turn these current events around in enough time while the person is still alive and still has time to turn around and make it right the way they started to make it right from the start, before they had the time and opportunity. Don't put your faith in man. Pray for man. Put your faith in God. All these leaders who feel they have some bit of sovereignty, and they get that taste of sovereignty and they want to take it a bridge too far. They don't know that they've gone too far. Caesar didn't know he went too far. Far enough that all of his friends in his circle who were egging him on, they were the ones who stabbed him to death. Hitler, he didn't know he took it a bridge too far. They got out of control. The Pharaoh, Moses Pharaoh, he didn't realize he took it a bridge too far. You see that repetition? You see how it is all the way through history? Learn from it. Don't turn a blind eye and deaf ear to it, because these things aid our sanity in these current events. We can be a part of the thing, the catalyst, that thing that stimulates the spontaneous improvement in the right direction, as opposed to saying, oh, we're all lost for hope. You're not, because man is not in control, and God softens our hearts, even the hearts of the most hard headed person, stubborn, set in their way. It don't seem like they can be right to save their life. Those are the people, those are the challenges that God like. The impossible. The impossible. It's impossible for a rock to praise God in your place. But he said very clearly, if you don't give him credit for where it is due, a rock will do it in your place. So that shows you that God loves a good challenge. He loves a good challenge. If he's there with you despite your belief or unbelief, he's showing you he likes a challenge. He likes a good challenge. It's entertaining. It's there for a purpose. For example, it was plenty of times when Jesus performed miracles that were so challenging, no man could have done it. No man could have done it outside of him, and God guiding him and using him and leading him to do it. So you have to understand that these things, these events that's happening, and you feel this overwhelming sense of, I'm not in control. Everything's going wrong. Oh, this is going to be bad. You have to understand, though it's a challenge, it is not beyond God. He could turn it all for the good, but you need to humble yourself and acknowledge him in all your ways. And then you'll humble yourself and find out. Don't fool around and find out. Humble yourself and find out. I always give God all the credit because I know I'm limited. I know for example, people always say, oh, where you're so academically successful, your honors, and you have all of these acknowledgments in these scholarly type of mentions and stuff, but they have no idea. I abhor school, and I'm just now letting it really be known. And it wasn't me. It wasn't me. I was being led to do the things that I did. And that is how I accomplished those goals that I accomplished. I read the same materials as people who had a better, more prestigious education than I did. But if you read my book, I'll help you understand that has nothing to do with your level of intelligence. It has nothing to do with your level of intelligence. Your level of intelligence has a lot to do with your encoding process. Your encoding process is the way you take in information, digest it, store it, and later retrieve that information in the most appropriate time. People don't tell it to you like that. They don't teach it to you like that. And then when you feel like, oh, this is relative, this information that I have right now is relative, and I learned it somewhere. I just picked it up somewhere, and I want to apply it because it's applicable to this moment. And then somebody dissuades you and said, nope, nope, keep it to yourself. That's not applicable here. Yeah, but it is, and you know it is. And against all better judgment, you say something. And guess what? You unwittingly improve something. You aided improvement because you couldn't hold it. You couldn't control it just coming out. And you have to understand that is a part of your uniqueness, not a flaw. A lot of people call it a flaw. It's not a flaw. It is your uniqueness, your unique way of contributing in a way that nobody else could, because this was your unique gift. That's one of the reasons why even in the Bible and any history where you see where somebody was renowned, it's similar to the rejection that they experience and say, well, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. You can't do that. And dissuading them and discouraging them and tearing them down. But they somehow, they say, I can't hold this in. And they end up making such drastic improvements that they themselves become renowned because God turned it for their good. Because somehow in that dire need, that dire desire to I can't hold it no more. The passion, the drive, the unstoppable force to deny anybody that's telling you no, stand down, hold back, out, they can't stop you. In that, you have made some changes because you trusted God against all odds. And it's like, how do you know that that's what I did? Well, God turned it for your good. That's how you know. It would have hurt you. It would have caused harm. But you had faith. You had faith that what was in you was right. And that's a part of the grace that's sufficient. Even though we don't deserve it, we can never deserve it. It's only man, it's only people who say, you got to deserve something for me to do it. God doesn't do that. He'll help you even in your sins. You could be out there fornicating, lying, stealing, killing, all of that. And God will still hear you and answer you. He's the only one that's sovereign that says there's nothing you can do that will hurt me. Even the devil, he allows the devil privileges. And nobody can be wronger than the devil. The devil, y'all be doing things even the devil don't do, because even the devil admonishes and admits there is a God. But the thing is, when we come to an understanding, God starts turning things for our good, turning things in our favor. And it's because he accepts the challenge that we call flaws, that we call mistakes, that we call reprehensible, that we call deplorable, the things we call shameful, the things we title hopeless, hapless. Those are challenges, special challenges that's only for one. And that one can't be controlled by your good behavior. He can't be controlled by any means, any fashion. You just have to follow, observe and follow. Observe and follow. You can't control him. You can acknowledge that it's him and be thankful that he did what he doing. What you say, Jackie, like Paul throwing it aside. Yeah. It's just there. And God knows it's there. And it's like, even despite yourself, those things that you say, I can't help myself doing. If you're addicted to something, you like, I can't help myself. This is just what I'm going to do. I'm addicted to lying. I'm addicted to covering my butt. Even though it's like, yeah, you didn't really need to lie, but you're lying. You're stealing. Even though you really didn't need to steal, you're stealing. There's something in you that you just can't help yourself, but it's okay. It's okay. And it's like, man, I can't do right to save my life. It's all right. Man, all of these things is going wrong and I just don't understand it. No matter what happens, every time I try to do right, it go wrong. Don't worry about it. That's what God is. He specializes in turning things for your good. And it's not just in one book, but it's in many things in the events, even our modern times. It's in everything you do, everything you see. You can see it. You can track it. You know that wasn't you, but something happened that was so good and so spontaneous. And you like, oh my God, I didn't even know it was going to be that good. Wow, I just did a little bit. And God took that little bit, turned it for a whole lot of good. What you say, sis? God is saying whatever is in you, do despite what you do through. And you know what? A lot of people, they get a big head because they feel like I am God because God doing so much for them. That didn't work out for the devil. The devil used to be the most beautiful thing in heaven because God would always grant whatever he wanted. And he's like, well, I want to be God. And God was like, slow down now. Slow down. I'm already occupying that space. No one person can occupy the same space. And if you think about it, God kept undoing that. He separated the light and the dark. He separated man and woman. He separated a lot of things, the sky and the land. He separated because he's like, things have to occupy their own space for a unique purpose, for a special purpose that can't be replaced. So even though we do things that God don't like, he turned it for our good, and he's not going to take it back that we should not exist. He's not taking back the devil's existence and say he can't exist anymore because it's for a purpose. And he loves despite the fact that he can't look on that. So that's the whole purpose of God turning everything for your good. He said, can't nobody else do it. And eventually you're going to ask me. You're going to ask because you're going to need it. You're going to have a dire need for it. And that's what we are. That's where we are in these current events. I believe that's exactly why God says his grace is sufficient. Yeah, because it is. That's a great point, sis. It is. And there's nothing new under the sun. And that's why there's so much repetition, because we got to learn. And a lot of times we learn the hard way. And that's why there's so much repetition. It's like so repetitive that it's like, oh, when are we going to get the point already so we can move beyond this lesson? But here we are in current events, and everybody's like, man, I can't believe where we are right now. Believe it. Trust God. You're going to be in dire need to do that. And he's going to answer. He's going to answer. And it's going to be him, not nobody else, not man, not your sister, not your mama, not nobody. Because oftentimes when we in that kind of dire need, there's nobody around us that can help us. And that was for purpose. That was for a purpose. The purpose of establishing the understanding between you and the sovereignty that is God. That even though you thought it was going to go this way, he said, no, humble yourself and I will be the way for you. Don't worry about it. You will. Because it said every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. And we are in these times. So for a time such as these, you were here so that you can help people to understand. Yep, we're about to be in it. And I appreciate Bishop Drew J. Sheard. Stand tall, stand strong. Don't let them bring you down. These are the times, these are the trying challenges that God really, really basks in, because he shines the most in these kinds of challenges. So don't be thinking, oh, this is bad. This is the time when God really, really shines. And it's not just for the believers. It's for the unbelievers. He got the believers. It's for the unbelievers. So in your unbelief, this is when God is really going to shine. It's historical. Track it. Track it in everything. Look at how Siddhartha became Buddha in a time where it was like, all is lost. I don't know what. And he went out. He had already gone out to try to seek the more of God. He did not know. He was so far down the line to be Buddha or king that it was ridiculous. And suddenly, even in his unbelief, he came to believe and then had to apply it. Moses was an unbeliever until the time came where he was a believer. Everybody has that same thing. This is where God shines. This is not hopeless. This is the time where God turns everything for the good of them who love him. Not just because it's going your way, not just because you could predict it, but because it's going crazy, it's haywire. There's no sense in it. This is when God shines. So for your mental health and well-being, understand there's nothing new under the sun. Study to show yourself approved. Rewind this. I gave you a couple of good answers that are eternal. For now, remember, mental health is physical wealth. See you. Mental health is physical wealth.